we are back in the garage working on the EM2, our budget K-Series build. So where we left off, we were doing some rust repair. It's just there's some surface rust on the rad support. Let me show you. So you'll see, actually, the stuff I already kind of cleaned up starting to rust again because it's been months since I've been out in the garage because I've just been doing life things. So I know it all flows together because we have tons of videos that are still just coming out. So this is why we do videos ahead of time. So what we're going to do is we're going to sandblast all the rust. We're going to sandblast our welds. We're going to clean up what we need to clean up. Then we got to pull the dash to get the AC out because we're not putting AC back in. I want to paint that back rad support to match the car. And then I'm probably going to put electric power steering in. Now, being a budget build, we want to be as cheap as possible. I'm pretty sure I found a full what would it be, EM3 or EP3 parts car. I think Buddy wants $50 for the power steering. Same guy we bought the rad from, and we bought some other parts from. So we're going to end up buying the electric power steering so we can bypass that. If not, you could literally just go over here, right where the power steering lines are, and you could loop those lines. It's the same thing. But electric power steering will be nice. Technically, loop lines don't pass inspection where I'm from, so most mechanics wouldn't notice it, but just in case, that's I have to cover the motor up because it has open ports on the intake and exhaust, and I'm probably going to want to try to cover this up a little bit just so we don't get sand, because sand will go everywhere. So this is a very dirty job, but it's going to be the most efficient way to make this last, because if I don't sell the car, I want to keep the car. But if I keep the car, I want it to last a long time. So knocking off all this rust properly is the way to go. So by the way, I'm in the Vega sand for $11, which will add to the budget later on in the video. Okay, so the bumper is just literally resting. It's not pushed in. I didn't bother, so that's why it's like that. I'm doing this for a reason. I want to see what bolt holes I can shave. So, for example, I know I don't need this one. I don't need that one. That one is for the hood rubber, so I need that one. I don't need that one. Now, one of these is for a rubber as well. I'll have to double check. All the ones underneath here, I don't need to care about. This is prop rod. I don't need that one. What is that one for? Good question. Don't need. So I just marked off which ones. That screws onto something. I don't know what. It could be power steering reservoir, but I'm pretty sure on the D17s, it might be actually for the D17 power steering. But I'm gonna get rid of it, get rid of. Keeping the ones for the hood adjustment, keeping the one down here for the rubber, get rid of that because I'm going to put hood struts in it, and that will just clean up the rad support a little more. I'm not going to go too crazy because obviously I could end up shaving that if I wanted to. Actually, I still might. It all depends because I'd have to weld it solid, grind it down, add some fill. And then you have in here, which you really don't want to be doing too much of that too. So I don't know how far I'm going to go. I just figured if I'm this far, why not make it a little nicer? It's literally going to cost me like cents for a little piece of metal to cut up. If you had to buy a sheet, I think a sheet is like $20 Canadian. So we'll mark down $20 Canadian for the sheet. Here, and it's literally, it's small. It's probably like a 1x3, 1x2, 1x2 probably. So get those cut. We'll come back once they're all cut and ready to go. We'll weld them on spot, and then we're going to start doing the work inside the engine bay to clean up where the new mounts went. Now I got to take this stuff back off and got them all cut. You will see I put them in from behind. There's a little bit of tape holding it up, and then I'll just weld that solid, which will be pretty well flush, and away we go. So what I always do as well, not only do I put some tape, I'll take a head of a screwdriver, go underneath, and put pressure on it. That way, when it first ignites the weld, if it burns the tape, I still held it in spot. It's not going to take much to hold that in spot. It's just to stop it from when the first bit of water goes, boop, it doesn't push it down out of the way. Once that's welded up, we will mess around with that bottom rad support where it was tore, and we'll get that reinforcement welded in, and then it's time to start doing body work, which really isn't going to be that bad. We should have it in primer today. The heat's on back here. So Like that. That is welded up good enough. I'll grind that down a little more and then I'll just put a little coat of fiberglass on that and that is done. I'm gonna do the same thing over here. I'm just not gonna show you guys. So it's extremely dusty in here because we're still standing on the EM2, which you've seen earlier in the video. I'm almost ready for primer. I'm gonna show you what I did and why I did it, and then we're gonna mix up some primer and spray it. All right, so you did see we did sandblast this. Now I'm gonna prime the whole rad support because I did shave a few spots, and then I did do in through here where we welded the mount, down through here. Now, you're not gonna see it all that well. You can see it right there. There's like a little indent there and a little indent there. What I'm gonna end up doing is bringing the seam sealer down. Might even come down here. Nah, I'll come here, and then I'm gonna add some seam sealer from this joint here across to clean that up, and then up through here a little bit to clean that up. It's just, no one's ever gonna see it. Makes it look factory, and I'll be happy that way. So we're gonna get that in primer. We don't do the seam sealer until last because A, I don't wanna scuff the seam sealer up like you see I did there, because it gets rid of the lines, the factory lines that are there. So I will prime it, sand it, get ready for paint, and right before paint, I will seam seal the couple joints I wanna do. Now you get to this side, it's gonna be the same thing on this side. I'm gonna come down with the seam sealer to here, and then I probably come down here. I might even bring it right down to here, and then I'm gonna do in here underneath the factory seam sealer, just make it a little bit bigger. That's done. Now, you did see last time that I sandblasted a lot of this, all through here and through there. I'm not gonna high build prime that because, well, it doesn't need to be high build primed. It should be epoxy primer. So epoxy I usually lay, it's called sealer, epoxy sealer. So I usually lay my epoxy primer, which I use as a sealer, before I paint. I don't want to leave that bare metal for that long due to the fact is I want to shut the heat off back here to electric heat. It's out in an old garage. It's going to cost me a fortune. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prime it today, just the spots that have body fill, high build primer. And then tomorrow I'm going to do a little bit more sandblasting so I'm happy. And then I'm going to epoxy prime everything that's bare metal. And then next week when I get back to it, I'll have to scuff up the epoxy primer so we can paint it. So there's a couple things I'm going to have to do for sandblasting is I want to sandblast all that, clean that up. And I want to actually get some Rhino Guard, some Rhino bed liner, and I'm going to bed line that. And same with where you can see where I welded. You can see I welded in there, so you can see the spot welds there where I welded. So I'm going to sandblast the whole inner wheel well, and I'm going to re-bed line that. So same thing with over here. I'm going to sandblast up to about here. You can see there's a spot weld that was there. I'm going to sandblast that, and I want to re-bed line all this, make it look factory, and done. And then same thing on this side. It's not rusty through here, but I will clean up that little bit of rust as well. So off camera, that was probably, I didn't do it straight, probably 3-4 hours worth of work. It sucks because it's all by hand. A lot of it you can't get at. So now I'm ready for primer just so I can cover this up and have some fun with it tomorrow to sandblast. And then we can clean up this engine bay a little more, which means the rack and pinion has to come out because we have an electric power steering rack. Paid $50 for it. I think I have to buy new tie rods and stuff, but so we have to take that out. We're gonna cut the AC lines out. Here I'm gonna cut out. There's no need for them. Once this is all primed and ready, I wanna take, so I'll cut it. I'll probably weld the piece there. I haven't 100% decided, or I might look at a non-AC card just to see if there's rubber grommet that goes there. But like I do know I'm gonna need to sandblast that, clean that up, and then see what's underneath of that heat shield or whatever you wanna call it. I do want to paint that the color I'm painting the car, just makes it look a little nicer, cleans this up, and with electric power steering, I do get rid of, that is the brake booster, the power steering line there, and then the return, which is there. So that's that. Now, obviously I could keep going and going and going on this engine bay. This is supposed to be a cheap build, $2,000 American for a K-swap. I only did this because A, I painted and I wanted to use the factory RSX body mounts, and that's what we did. So unfortunately that comes with some sanding and some welding, but if you want to do this on the cheap, this is what you need to do. Would it be better to buy the $600-700 Canadian mounts? Probably. If you didn't have the know-how to do this, or the spot and your engine bay didn't need to be painted, I probably should have just bought the mounts, but that's here nor there. We're still under budget and we're gonna have some. Now that we got this ready to spray, I'm just gonna spray some primer on this, guys. You can watch me have some fun. I'm not spraying at a very high pressures, like probably 10 pounds if you're lucky. So there's not gonna be much overspray. I will turn the exhaust fan on just to make sure, because there's parts everywhere, but I'm not taping up, I'm not spraying at a high pressure, and that will be the reason.
I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a problem.
So we have this in primer, as you've seen. We have the firewall stripped down to nothing, and I'll go over that as well. And I did start the manual swap. As you see, we pulled the dash out. It's really dark in the car, so we didn't really show you too much, but it's all pretty straightforward. So you will see I'm gonna have to sandblast a couple spots. I'm not gonna prime where I sandblast because it's underneath stuff that you'll never see, but I wanna clean it up so it doesn't rust. And then I'm just gonna sand this with some 320 and 400. I did put the clutch pedal in, which actually ended up going right there. You will see that is seam sealer, brush on seam sealer. I used the brush on seam sealer because I welded that in spot. So I put a bolt on the top of the wiper cowl. I welded it solid. That way the clutch pedal had its bracket or the third bolt to bolt to. And that way it's secure. And I don't want it to leak. Where it's the wiper cowl, you never know what is here. And you'll see there's our bolt there. So I put a nut up top and a nut there and made it tight. And then if I grab this, well, actually it's unbolted from the firewall right now, but when I grab it, it's pretty solid. I'll show you that afterwards. Right now, the whole dash is out due to the fact is we're about to paint. So I'm gonna leave this episode at this. I'm gonna sandblast those couple little spots that you've seen. I'm gonna sand the engine bay by hand. It's really nothing to see. So I'm not gonna really show you guys that because it would get boring quickly. We're just gonna sand it with some 320, 400. And then when I sandblast the rust or the little bit of surface rust that's on the firewall that is covered, I'll probably just feather that out with some 320 and 400. And then I'm gonna epoxy prime it, which is sealer, epoxy sealer. And then I will lay my base and my clear. And we are changing the color, which will add to our budget. But unfortunately, I don't like it silver. The whole car will get painted. It's just not part of this series. This series is can we swap this K-swap for 2,000 American, buy a car, swap it. And we actually manual swapped it for the same price. So we should be way under budget. We'll talk about the budget in the next video, guys. So if you're new to the channel, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and we'll definitely catch you on the next one.